friend, the great Kevin Hassett, former chair of the Council of Economic Advisors in the Trump administration, and author of the most important book in the 21st century. It's called The Drift, Stopping America's Slide to Socialism. Kevin, I'm not saying all the UAW demands are perfect or correct, but I think they have some pretty good points when you take a look at Bidenflation and Biden climates. That's all I'm saying.
Right, you know, I agree 100%, Larry, but I disagree with their asks because I think they're too small. You might think some of them are too large. But here's the way I think about the problem. You know, I've written a lot about this, as you know, at National Review, that if you have a job making a car with an internal combustion engine, or you work in a factory that makes spark plugs and supplies people that make internal combustion engines, then in the next 5 or 6 years, or put it another way, if you're 55 or younger with a job like that, your job is gone. It's gone by the end of the next Biden administration. And then they can sort of say, yeah, but we're going to create 1 million electric vehicle jobs, but the electrical vehicle jobs are in Tennessee, not in Michigan. And so then you can say, okay, well, the people could move to Tennessee, but everybody's going to think that they need to move to Tennessee so that they're all going to get crushed when they sell their house. I mean, it's an absolute humanitarian disaster. And I think if the UAW wins this, even if they got their 40%, it's going to be like, you know, the first night of the 300 battle against the Persians. You know, they'll look really good, but in the end, they're going to lose. And these guys are all going to lose their jobs, sadly, if Biden has his way with EVs.
Well, that's the thing, though. The Biden policies are going to destroy the car industry as we know it. And so I'm just using some of your estimates. I think that, I don't know, this could cost 500,000 jobs. With knock-on effects, it could cost 1 million jobs. It's already cost a lot of jobs in Europe. So I'm asking you how many jobs in the U.S., but I'm asking you really, I mean, I don't know if you've had a chance to read former President Trump's white paper on this, but he's making some powerful points. He wants to unwind all these Biden policies. Now, not all these car jobs are going to be saved. I get that. But on the other hand, he's not going to jam down your throat an EV or a Chinese battery or whatever else.
Right, and in a free market, you know, if an EV can win the battle, and I think they're really fun to drive, they can accelerate like crazy, right? And so, sure, let them compete, but these massive subsidies and then the clean air rules that destroy the internal combustion engine, they're a disaster. And, you know, by one estimate that I cited in National Review, 80,000 people have already lost their jobs to this. And if you look at the manufacturing data in the U.S. right now, it's terrible, right? 24 out of 32 months since Biden took office, blue-collar workers in manufacturing jobs have seen their real wages decline. You know, we had 6 months in a row of declining industrial production and manufacturing this year. And so Biden, you know, markets are forward-looking, as Larry Kudlow taught us a long time ago, and people understand what's coming, and they're already starting to retrench in the U.S., and manufacturing workers, not just in the auto sector, are feeling it all around. And so, you know, it's kind of funny, my son looked at my piece on National Review and said, Dad, I didn't know you were a champion of unions, but I totally sympathize with what's going on with the manufacturing worker right now. And President Biden doesn't. You know, he gave an economic speech last night where he was crowing about his incredible manufacturing record. But if you look at the facts, it's the opposite.
Actually, the number out today, the year-to-year change is still negative. I don't know how many, this 4, 5, 6 months in a row. Kevin, what about the Bidenflation problem? I mean, the auto workers didn't bargain for this. None of the workforce bargained for this. Most of the months we have seen a drop in real wages, and we've seen a drop in affordability. I think you just mentioned housing and mortgages a few moments ago. I mean, these are things that nobody bargained for that are happening. And I've also seen some stuff that if these trends continue, Kevin, there's going to be more strikes and more walkouts and more labor problems.
Right. No, I think that the perfect storm is happening. And Larry, you and I have been talking for a couple of months now because everybody's saying, oh, inflation's under control, about how it's not. And if you look at the latest producer price index, the consumer price index from this week, you know, inflation's running right now in the latest data we have about at a 7.5% rate, annual rate, if you just take the current month and extrapolate it, if it stays there. And so inflation is accelerating again, which means that while all this stuff is going on, the Fed is going to have to hike rates again. And so inflation's not under control. Biden inflation has set us onto a path that, you know, will make us wish that we could have Jimmy Carter instead of Joe Biden, and it's going to take a big disruption to fix it, sadly.
With Chevy Silverado and Silverado
Kevin, while we're on the subject of Bidenomics, Mr. Biden keeps telling us that he cut the budget deficit by $1.7 trillion. And I was just reading your piece, or a draft of your new piece for National Review. You don't seem to agree.
It's up now, and I just put it up.
All right, well, that's even better. Folks should go to the NRO and read Kevin's piece. But the point is, not only is the deficit going up, but spending is going up way beyond whatever. When I say Joe Biden's left-wing frenzied spending has had a lot to do with inflation, I mean, the numbers prove that out, even if Mr. Biden's in denial about it, is it not?
Yeah, it is. And Biden is using a trick that we need to talk about every day, is that he's abusing the data because of COVID. And so he's taking, like, the worst thing that happened during the COVID shutdown, or the most government spending because we were, mailing checks to keep people alive, and then comparing himself today to that. But I can remember back in 2019, I was sitting up in your office right above the Oval Office in the West Wing, and we were looking at the 10-year forecast for spending, and we kind of despaired that spending was going up a lot more than you and I thought was right, but there wasn't much we could do about it with a Democratic Congress. But back then, the 2019 Democratic Congress planned to spend, over our objections, really, this year, $5.3 trillion. That was what their planned spending was. Right now, spending this year, we know it's in the bag, is going to be at least 6.3. And so Biden and the Democrats have spent $1 trillion more than Nancy Pelosi wanted to spend in 2019. And so it's, you wonder where inflation came from. It's that. But for President Biden to say, yeah, he changed things by $1 trillion, he's right, but he got the sign wrong.
Or Nancy Pelosi was a budget hawk. That was a joke. That was a joke. Absolute joke. Kevin, let me just come back to the UAW for one last moment. So far, they're striking at only 3 factories. If they strike right across the board for the big 3, are there any economic estimates? What's this going to do to GDP? I've seen some Wall Street stuff. There could be a 2% loss of GDP if the strike lasted for a full quarter, 3 months. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm. Right, and I think that if the leadership accepts the deal, even that they asked for, that they're all going to be voted out as soon as possible, because the workers understand the forces that you're talking about, and it looks like the UAW guys, they really want to get higher wages, but they haven't done things like require that the Tennessee jobs go to the UAW, the kind of things that would, keep them going. And so I think that the bottom line is that, that because of that, the people aren't going to want to vote for the contract, even if the guys on top agree to one. And so I expect it's going to be a very lengthy strike. And I think the 2%, if it's a quarter number, is about right. I think if it's a month, I was getting, like, before you multiply by 4 to put things in the annual rate, that it's a 10th or 2 off of the GDP this year. And so that's about the right number. But I think that if it's, once we're a month in, then it's going to be like the GDP number that comes out the quarter is going to be about 8/10 lower once you multiply by 4.
All right, we'll keep a close look on the whole story. The great Kevin Hassett, thank you ever so